Connecting. We're going to wait just a few seconds to let some people join. It looks like we're good to go. All right, we're going to start our session. I'm so happy that we could be with you today. My name is Jim Crawley, and I'm the Director of Global Recruitment at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. And I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues to join. Mike, you want to introduce yourself and what you do and how long you've been there, that kind of thing?
I'm Mike Shanos, head men's lacrosse coach. Been there for a while, since 2004. Excited to be here talking to y'all tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Lee?
I'm Lee Sayers. I'm the women's soccer coach, and I'm also an associate professor in exercise science, and I've been at Hope for 22 years.
Great. So as you can see, students, we have some, very seasoned coaches with us today. We want to talk a little bit about Division III athletics in particular, but just to open it up with the fact that, as you probably know, or if you've learned, if you're looking at athletics, that there is a Division I, Division II, Division III, and an independent or NAIA or independent league as well. Division I and II are the ones you might see, especially Division I, you might see on TV. The larger schools, generally speaking. Division II tend to be more medium-sized, but 1 and 2 can offer scholarship potentially. Well, usually they do a certain number, and Division III cannot. But that certainly doesn't diminish the quality. We have many athletes who have actually gotten offers from other schools and have chosen to come to a D3 school because of the quality of the academics and athletics and the ability to really get play for a great athletic team. There's also, for those of you who don't make it at that level or don't have quite that level of talent, because you do have to be quite qualified to make an NCAA 1, 2, or 3 team. There's also club sports, and there's intramural. Club is also pretty competitive to make. Intramural is as I guess you say, more of a fun league that happens within your own campus. It's important to note that Division III athletics, there's over 186,000 athletes from 443 colleges and universities. It is the largest NCAA division, is Division III. And what Division III athletics and being in a school that has Division III, it allows you to kind of balance some rigorous academics, competitive athletics, and extracurricular opportunities. I mean, you really have the opportunity to do it all. But you still have really a commitment. It's very much a commitment to be a part of an athletic team. The student populations range at Division III schools from 300 to 24,000. Literally, it's a wide range of population. And 80% of the D3 schools are actually private colleges or universities. And as I mentioned, scholarships are not given at the D3 level. If you looked at a map of the U.S., which I don't have one to show you right now, but if you look at the map, most of the D3 schools are going to be in the upper Midwest and in the East Coast. And certainly there's some, if you go down into Texas, there's a few there, a few out in California. But if you looked at the map, it would be a high concentration in the Midwest and in the East. Just very, very briefly about Hope, because we really want to talk to our coaches, but we are a private Christian college, Division III, welcoming community, amazing opportunities at Hope. Caring professors, individualized attention, a lot going on at Hope. We have a full array of sports teams and varsity opportunities at Hope, and fantastic athletic facilities, some of the best, if not the best, in our conference. And just one quick thing about scholarship: we do consider all international students for up to $25,000 in academic scholarship. That's for international athletes. And then there's also right now a full tuition competition going on right now, and the deadline for that will be January 15th. So I'll give my contact information. I'll put it in the chat box in a minute while the coaches are talking, so that you can reach out to me if you have other questions. But what I want to do now is take a few minutes and just talk to the coaches about, what it's like to be a D3 athlete, what it's like to, compete specifically in this case at Hope College, but we're kind of talking about D3 athletics in general. But Coach Schoenfels with lacrosse, I mean, that's a sport that I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Canada, and you might know this better than I do, but that's kind of a terminal at the high school level. I don't think they can go on. Is there opportunities beyond that in Canada? And I've been told that the U.S. is where a lot of lacrosse players come.
It's correct. It's a little bit different. We play field lacrosse in the States, and then, Canada really is mostly box lacrosse. There are some prep schools that compete in field lacrosse. They come down and play some prep schools in the usually in the Northeast, or maybe a couple Ohio schools are involved in that as well. But for the most part, it's box lacrosse in Canada, and really some of the most skilled scorers in all of lacrosse come from Canada. So we would love to talk. We would love to talk to anybody who can put the ball in the back of the net and would like to come here.
Do you feel that transition from box lacrosse is it an easy transition for most athletes?
Yeah, in box lacrosse, the net is tiny and the goalie is huge. In field lacrosse, the goal is huge and the goalie is wearing no pads. So it's a lot easier for him to put it in the back of the net. So some outstanding shooters, come from that, and that's been a tradition since the '80s when I started playing. That the best finishers around the cage were Canadians.
Great. Coach Sears, soccer is such it's a growing sport in the U.S. I mean, obviously, I think we're behind many other countries in the kind of the popularity of the sport and the talent, but it's certainly growing in the U.S. But I know that schools do draw some great athletes from Canada. What would you kind of recommend, like, to students that we might have online that might be, hopefully earlier in the high school career? I know the seniors, it's a little bit different story, but if they're earlier on, what kind of things can they do to help prepare themselves to be, to show their stuff to a coach? Like, what should they be doing as early in their high school years?
I'm going to say one of the biggest things is, one, you have to reach out to colleges you're interested in. Don't always wait for coaches to reach out to you. Number two, we always ask for film. We prefer to see you in person, but we can't get everywhere. And depending on where you live in Canada, can we get there? So film is a big deal. Now, if you're close enough, a big thing for us are prospect camps. But that's not always possible. So I just think it's getting yourself in front of people. And if film's the only way to do it, you have to put something together and get that out to coaches.
And would you recommend that they reach out to an actual coach? Or I know that most of us, including Hope, have the questionnaire on their website, on the athletic website. Do you recommend kind of doing both? Do you recommend just doing the questionnaire? What do you recommend, at least for soccer?
I think you need to do both. The questionnaire gives its basic information, but I also don't have time to get in there every single day to see who submitted a questionnaire. So if a kid emails us directly, I'll check to make sure they have the questionnaire filled out, and if they haven't, I will ask them to do that. So you might as well just go ahead and fill it out first, and then contact the coach and get them the information they need.
Okay. And I appreciate that. And students, I should say, if you have questions for us, feel free to put in the chat box. I'm monitoring the chat box, and I'm happy to pass these or read them off and ask the coaches, or try to help with the answers as well. Coach, you talked about, well, I'm going to ask both of you this, and I'll start with Mike. If you could talk about, like, in a video that you're putting together, a highlight reel, a video, what I'm assuming you're just not wanting to see every goal they've made. Like, what should be in the film?
A lot of times we'll just ask for the raw film, and especially if we've gotten a little bit deeper with a recruit, and then just, hey, what's your number, and let's take a peek at that, and then we're going to try to come out and see you live, hopefully more than once, but if possible, at least once. So that's a great way to start. As far as the highlight film goes, yeah, you can get a highlight of them scoring against people that aren't very good defenders, or so we're looking at the whole picture, and we usually get a pretty quick read on it. I don't know, how long does it take you to get an first impression of the film, Coach Sears? Not too long for me. You feel that same way?
Yeah, not very long. I mean, we get a lot of highlight videos.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could put together a highlight video and look pretty good in it.
Yes.
So it's like, they're nice, but we often, same as you, Mike, we ask for the whole game, and we'll sit and look through it, because it's just not about what you do when you have the ball. What do you do without the ball? And then, if we like what we see, then we try to get you to campus and we want to come see you in person. But you can tell pretty quick You can't always tell the level of competition, right? I think that's the hardest part. But it's got to be enough to make us want to come see you.
Yeah. Yep. And some things stand out on film, like, your athleticism and your
Right.
competitiveness. And, you can see that pretty quickly as well. So it's a good idea to have that for sure. Almost impossible to get a read on you without it. Almost. Unless you've got to live locally and we could see you.
And then, so I know you all have extremely competitive teams like we do at Hope College in general. And so you're recruiting your athletes obviously as early as you can kind of get your eyes on them. And I know sometimes athletes, they get into their senior year and they're like, I want to be recruited. And frankly, if I'm not mistaken, you're looking at kids 1 and 2 years prior to that. I mean, when do you like to get your eyes on a talented athlete? Coach Sears?
As soon as we can. I mean, when we go to games, if we see a freshman we'll identify him and then try to get him to camp and stay in touch with him. But we know full well that we could recruit a kid for 4 years and lose them to scholarship at the end of their junior year or senior year. So I think we start really talking to sophomores right now. We're moving past seniors and we're talking to juniors. I am getting emails from seniors right now, and at December of your senior year, it's for most places it's too late.
Right. And Coach Shanhals, what do you, when you hear students that are looking at different schools, different sizes, different divisions, some will say, well, Division III, why would I want to play Division III ball or play whatever sport Division III? What are some of the advantages as you're recruiting a student and they're trying to decide, and maybe they're at the talent level where some D2 schools are looking at them? How would you kind of differentiate that and tell them what are the advantages of D3 at least for lacrosse?
Yeah. The first thing is, I probably approach it more like a dad than a coach who's trying to grab somebody up or whatever. So I want them to make the best decision for them. I understand that the college search is long and it's not an easy thing. They need to look around. So I encourage people to compare. And we obviously stack up pretty well at Hope. It's a beautiful place and a great education. And so we're a little slower, honestly, with kids, and want them to really vet, their options before they make a decision and commit to us. Having said that, it's very important that they understand, this is a very competitive environment. So in men's lacrosse, there aren't very many Division I teams. And there are even fewer Division II teams. So it's not like football or basketball or something like that, where there's a glut of opportunities for them at a higher level. High level Division III lacrosse is outstanding lacrosse. Luckily for us, we get some really talented people, or we get some guys who are super talented, but they were late bloomers, right? So the D1 guys can start talking to the kids, September 1st of their junior year. And you do, like Coach said, you get a little sense of, whether they're going to have, they're going to want to go in another direction at that point in time a little bit more, or if they have different opportunities. And, but we still get a lot of those kids that have had Division I opportunities that decide to come to Hope because they want to be an engineer or they're pre-med, and they really can't do both at a Division I level. They've got to be, right. So we're recruiting, outstanding student athletes. And for our guys, practice, when they get to practice, they call it recess. It's like, this is the fun part of their day. And then it's back to the books, after. So the balance is, I think, in a really healthy place. And so that's a really appealing option to parents and students as they consider it. What does their life look like? What is their college experience going to be like? How are they going to be transformed as a person? And athletics can be a huge part of that. And we love it. We're all about it. But we also know that the academic part is essential to the process and the opportunity for them.
Great, thank you, Coach Sears. Obviously, academics is why they're at Hope College, and how does that balance? How do kids, at least, you can speak to the soccer team, and I think in general it probably applies to most of our teams. But how do they find that balance between, the rigors of the academics at Hope with, the demands of being an athlete?
I think the first thing we tell them is it's a lot different than high school. I mean, they're not sitting in school from 7 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. So they might have 2 classes a day. They might have 3 classes a day. The workload is much harder, and there's more work to do, even though you're not sitting in class all day. But if you use your time well, when you get out of class, you can go sit and watch TV or you can go do your homework. So I think they learn to balance it pretty quickly. You can tell when midterms are; they get a little stressed out, and I think every team handles it differently. The rule on our team is you're definitely here to be a student. Soccer is going to be number two. So if there's a conflict between class and practice, you go to class. It's difficult to schedule classes around practice, so we have a lot of nurses, pre-med. So there is some lab conflict. They're not going to get punished athletically for taking care of an academic responsibility. And I think once they know that, it alleviates some of the pressure. I mean, there's periods of heavy travel, but they're typically day trips. But I think they just have to be really organized. I mean, it's hard, but a lot of people do it. So it's just a function of how we handle it and how we talk about it with them. And I think those are questions to ask coaches as you're being recruited. How do they handle academics, and how do they pair that with their sport?
And two, I know that there's an incredible amount of support for our students. So are there study tables, are there specific services for athletes, or is it just the general services, which Hope does a great job of just in general? But are there specific things for within the athletic department to help the students manage this, or do you really direct them toward the services just in general at the college? Coach Shenhouse?
Yeah, I think Hope does such an excellent job of wrapping up each student and supporting them and taking care of them. And we, I think as an athletic department, it's probably program to program. But we know we try to embed our freshmen with an older guy on our team who is maybe studying the same thing or interested in the same thing, or someone who can have their back and, help them out. And then we have a part of our leadership team, an academic liaison who can facilitate for them, because they might not want to talk to us, the head coach, if they're struggling in class, but they'll talk to a teammate. Hey, I need help with this calc class that I'm struggling with. And so, so-and-so, on the team is an engineer and he can help you. Why don't you guys get together? Or let's go to the Academic Success Center and, set up a tutoring opportunity, or have you hit office hours yet? So sort of just nudging them in the direction of all the support that's available for them, and encouraging them to avail themselves of those opportunities for help. That's hard to do, though. As a high school kid, you're not used to asking for help all the time or struggling at that level. And so, trying to build in some support for them that they're comfortable with is important.
Coach Sears, would you have anything different or to add, or pretty much the same for women's soccer?
It's pretty much the same. I mean, I have access to mid-semester grades and semester grades, so I can look at midterms to see if they're struggling. My
Okay.
underclassmen fill out a book for me weekly to just, how are they doing, whether it's socially, mentally, academically. Um, I think our kids know why they're here. Sports are really important and we really want to win, but they're here for an education. So we just encourage them, the best time to get a tutor is before you're struggling. Sign up for
Yeah.
study groups, utilize your teammates. Sometimes I'll try to help if it's in my wheelhouse, but it isn't always. So it's just pushing them, like Mike said, it's pushing them to the resources.
Great. Thank you, both of you. And we just had a question, and I'll start with you, Coach Sears, and then you can both answer if you like. But I don't know if you can see the chat box, but are there ways in which players can develop their sports skill and be seen by scouts as well to realize their sporting potential? Can you see that? Can you see the chat
Yeah.
box to read it as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read
Okay.
it. Mike, what would you say to that?
Yeah.
Scouts.
You know,
And when you,
I think that yes, I think, as far as lacrosse goes, probably some of the scouts would be for junior organizations in Canada, right? So I grew up a hockey player and played junior hockey, and so it's basically the same sort of a structure. Um, and so, yeah, are you going to get seen playing? Well, maybe it's seen on film, or maybe it's seen on some of the opportunities that might be, you're playing, in a different league in the summer. But yeah, you have opportunities. And I think in lacrosse, especially, it's a network of people. So we're all out on the recruiting circuit. We all kind of know, each other, and, we talk to each other about who's really bringing it. So yeah, there's an opportunity to get seen, but then there's also that opportunity to sort of get into the network like that. And it's almost like who are your guys type thing. And that's how actually the first Canadians started to come down to the States, because they played some, international competition and got seen. And so, yeah, I think there are opportunities like that in lacrosse.
Do you both offer? Go ahead, Coach. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for us, I think scouts, when I hear scouts in soccer, I think of those recruiting services. And some of those things you have to pay for. And there's so many of those out there, and we get so much stuff from them.
Spamming it.
And it's when I get a kid from Canada, or I get a kid from California. It's like, do they really want to come here? Right? So it's like, that's why I said just contact the coach. I mean, if you're in that service, that's great. But if you're just relying on them to find you a school, a lot of coaches just delete those things. So it gets hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about, like you both have kind of said or insinuated, it's about the match. It's about finding out where you really want to be and where it's a good match for you. And if it's athletics, then it's also a good match for the team. And because, as I've told athletes, I'm sure you all have had to tell many more than I have, that you can be a really, really good athlete, but if the team doesn't need your position right now, I mean, I find it more a lot of times, basketball just comes to mind, because I know I've had an athlete where they were just really a shooting guard, and they were really, really good, but coach didn't need any shooting guards right now. So this particular year, he wasn't really going after that kid, just because he really didn't have a spot for him. So in the way of having spots, how does that work? With lacrosse, with men's lacrosse, and then we can go over to women's soccer. But how does it work for making the team? And like, is there walk-ons? Do you have to be recruited to potentially walk? I mean, how does that work in your case for men's lacrosse?
Yeah, I think it is important to be recruited. What Coach Sears said earlier about communicating directly with the coach is super important. Okay. So to assume that you can do this or we need that, just like you mentioned, that's probably not the way to proceed. Right. So try to verify, and then, come to campus and take a visit. Don't just take a visit with the tour and all that kind of stuff, but meet the people that you're going to be spending a lot of time with. So if you can come to a prospect camp, that's awesome, because you're going to see the people that, and you're going to have a chance to maybe have a meal with them and talk to them a little bit more. All right. So I think that's a really important part of the process, is to make sure that you do your homework, on that first. But yeah, absolutely. We have a roster cap of 45, no more than that. And we have a variety of different roles on our team. And it's very, very competitive for each of those things. And, depending on who has, maybe verbally committed at what point in time. So we have a couple of juniors in high school verbally committed, and that's super early for us. But we're still have a couple spots out there for seniors too, that we're sort of waiting, because their admissions decisions just came out, last week. So, Yeah, it's a process. Just be transparent with the coach, and the coach will be transparent with you about, like, here's where we are. Here's what we're thinking for your position, or for you in particular, as it suits a role that you could play on our team. So I think communication is key.
So before we go to women's soccer, Coach, with lacrosse, is it safe to say then that a walk-on is probably unlikely?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think some of our, we've had guys come in as walk-ons and end up all conference players, and so we're humble enough to know that we don't know everything, so we really don't mind that. But if we already know we have a ton of depth at that position, I'm going to be honest with them about, all right, there's 8 of these people and there's 7 of them and they're awesome, and so you're fighting for one opportunity. So it's very positional, and I'm not sure if it's exactly the same in soccer too. If you have sort of players that can play multiple positions, that's probably an asset for us. And is that the same, Coach?
Yeah, if you have a kid who can play, I'm not going to get into it, but like you can play 1 or 2 things, it makes you more marketable. It allows us to play you in more than one spot. And I think historically we've always had a tryout. Now we heavily recruit people, but we say you still have to come go through the process. We wanted to get away from that when we do promise spots. But I mean, if somebody's really good, I mean, our goal is to win games. It's like, I don't want to keep having tryouts, but we keep getting put in these situations where we just want the best players. So we're kind of this hybrid of whether you call them walk-ons. And the thing for a walk-on is you better make sure Hope's where you want to be. Because what if you come and don't make it? You have to love the school you're at, not just the sport that you're playing.
If I could jump on that, I would say that's even if you are not a walk-on. That's very, very important. So
great. No, I appreciate the advice, and I know the students do too. Like any, would you have any kind of last? We only have like 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes left. It's gone pretty quick. I certainly appreciate everything you've said in the last half hour. I've learned quite a bit too. But any pieces of advice, and you've given a lot already. So is there anything else that you would want to tell the students and our parents or coaches, whoever we might have online? Any last pieces of advice you'd want to give them in the couple minutes we have left? Mike?
I would say especially your junior year of high school is very important to start the process and to start looking and to start narrowing down your search parameters. And you probably don't know, there's a lot you don't know at that point. Ask a lot of questions, take visits, and then stay in communication as the process develops, and you'll get a sense of how comfortable you are with the place that you're looking, and then also vice versa. If they're pretty fired up to keep talking to you, you're going to get a good sense of okay, this might be a good fit.
Great, thank you. Lee?
I think you have to make sure it's an overall good fit. If you remove sport from it, is it a place you want to live? Can you see yourself living there? There's a lot to do at Division III besides academics and athletics. So do they have clubs you want to do? What else do you want to do? Especially if you're going to be far away from home and you can't go home a lot. You have to want to live there. So even if you're a great player on my team, if you get hurt and your sport is removed, are you where you want to be? So I think talking to coaches is great, but some coaches aren't always going to be honest. So I would make sure you meet with the team. Like, spend time with the team, because that's who you're going to be spending time with. You'll get a good idea if this is a team you want to be a part of.
Great. Lastly, do each of you or either team or both your teams have summer camps for athletes that they can look on the website and see? I mean, is that a possibility, or do we not have those available? I don't know which sports do and don't have those. So
we have a website for our camp. It's hopesoccercamps.com.
Great.
And we have a residential camp. If you're a good sophomore or junior, we recommend the prospect camp, and I think that's July 20 through 22nd. But it's hopesoccercamps.com.
Great. Mike, do you guys have one as well?
We typically have a prospect experience where they come and sort of watch us play in the morning while we debrief with them what our standards are. And then we sort of flip it around. And then our guys take them through a normal practice. And then we draft teams at lunch and compete in the afternoon. We typically do that in the fall. The summer is pretty jammed with some event or this prospect thing or my club team or whatever. So we try to sort of put that typically in October, get them on campus, and that's a good experience. But we usually do that each fall.
Okay, Mike, if you want to drop any kind of a link in there, feel free to put in the chat anything related to the lacrosse page, or if you want to put that in the chat, feel free to do that. And thanks, Lee, for putting that the Hope Soccer Camps one in there. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate all the feedback, all the great advice. We held a pretty consistent number of audience members out there, probably a combination of student parents and coaches. And so thank you so much for your assistance. Thanks for being here. And we appreciate that. And we'll wait and see if any other links pop in. But my email is out there. Our the Hope College website is there. And you can certainly link to athletics and then the individual sports. And then Mike just put a link there too to an Instagram and his email. So thank you both. I appreciate your help and hope everybody has a great evening. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Best of luck to y'all.